Hey everybody, we're going to just do another impromptu live, unplanned, let me know. I'm still learning the live system, so just checking the settings. All right, we're going to talk today about a few things. We're going to talk about what the poor and middle class kind of do inadvertently or intentionally, and how that's a little bit different than what the wealthy do. Oh, what's this button? Yeah, I don't think I'm going to invite those people. Okay, so let's talk about the treadmill. So when you work, you're on a treadmill. Everyone talks about the rat race, the treadmill, and the only reason people are on a treadmill is because that's the only thing people have been exposed to. You're only exposed to the treadmill, so that's why you're on it. So when you go to school, you talk to your teachers, you talk to your parents, you talk to your friends. What do they talk about when it comes to making money? It is study hard at school, get good marks, graduate. While you're doing that, maybe find a job, work for $15 an hour, and that's how you make money. That is a treadmill. So you contribute an hour of your life, you get $15. The government takes theirs, you take yours. That's a treadmill. So that is a standard treadmill. The problem is that the world is filled with dozens, if not hundreds, of different treadmills. But the only treadmill that we're exposed to is the sacrificing of time. That's the only treadmill that we know, because that's all we're taught. Do you really believe that people who have millions of dollars, tens of millions, billions of dollars are selling off their time for the money? Like, there's not enough time in your life to sell off, right? And why would you want to do that anyway? The higher you go up on the wealth scale, most people will tell you, like, I don't want to sell more of my time. Like, I'm running out as it is. My kids are getting older. I don't want to sell off my time. But that's really the only treadmill that we're taught. So I'll tell you what the wealthy treadmill. The wealthy are also on a treadmill. Don't think you can escape the treadmill. There's a treadmill for everything. But there's the sacrificing time treadmill, and then there's the building wealth treadmill, which people are not told about in school, and they should be told in school because it's not a difficult concept, but whatever. Okay, so to talk about the treadmill that the wealthy are on, you need to understand a few terms, okay? So the treadmill that the wealthy are on, you need to understand what is an asset and what types of assets are out there, right? So I'm not going to go into books. A lot of books like destroy this concept, and they're totally wrong. But I'm not going to name names because I don't want to get in trouble. So there are two types of assets on the planet. That is it. Two types of assets. Productive, non-productive. That's it. There's no other types of assets. People are going to tell you, like, oh, it puts cash in my pocket, and it does this, and an asset does that, and liabilities take money out. That's all BS, okay? That's all marketing stuff. There's only two types of assets. Productive, non-productive. Very simple, right? Productive is as it sounds. It produces a good or service, right? It's like, that's a bird. Why? Because it flies, or whatever. It has feathers. A productive asset produces a good or service, period. Non-productive assets, which is what the poor and middle class focus on, for some reason, the poor and middle class love focusing on non-productive assets. Cars, homes, clothes, luxury items, completely non-productive. Do they even think about a productive asset? Maybe. Most don't. If you look at how many people retire broke, they clearly are not thinking about productive assets, or they weren't even made aware of them in school. Not even aware. I didn't even know that productive assets existed. Of course you didn't, because no one told you. No one told you about the 99 other treadmills of making money, but they've only told you about, oh, if you work this many hours, you'll get paid this much. That's a terrible treadmill. Terrible treadmill. Okay? So, two types of assets, productive and non-productive. Very simple. A productive asset would be, like a simple example, from my era, would be like a pinball machine. A pinball machine gives you a service of entertainment. You give it a quarter. It trades entertainment for a quarter or $1, whatever, okay? Laundromat, the service of cleaning your clothes for money. That's an asset that is productive. In exchange for whatever it gives you, you take in money. That's a productive asset. Very simple. The irony is everyone wants a job and they work for giant corporations that are productive. It's staring them in the face. The giant company takes in money for the goods or services it's providing. They're running the treadmill to get their shareholders richer, but the workers are running on the treadmill of selling their time for money. It's right in front of them that the wealthy people are using this asset to produce cash flow without working, and the people in this productive asset are on the treadmill of selling time for money. It is like irony. It's like complete ironic. Okay? So, understanding that. So now that you understand that, everyone starts off on the treadmill they learned at home and at school. Sell your time, get some money. Sell your time, get some money. So that is fine. We got to start somewhere. Some people don't start like that. Most people do. It's fine. No big deal. However, to get out of that treadmill, the only escape out of that treadmill is to transition into getting that other treadmill up and running. Getting a productive asset to start making money. $1, $10, $100, $1,000. $10,000, $100,000, $1 million. When you have the other treadmill running more than what you are selling your life for, you can then decide, do I want to keep selling my time? Maybe you do. Maybe you love your job, you love the people you work with, you love the customers you serve. That's fine. But now at least, because you have the second treadmill up and running, you can transition, stop working, or keep working, or work part-time, or whatever. But the key here is to recognize those two assets, right? Productive, non-productive. Because if you don't know that productive assets exist, you will just be blind and you will retire broke like most people who rely on that one treadmill, which you can't sustain forever because we get old. Like you get old, you get tired, you get obsolete, you get ageism, you get politics, you get crap, and then you can't do it anymore, right? So you got to do that. Both camps, aren't you always giving up time? I don't know what you mean, but for example, there's a difference in terms of like, I'm spending my time now, right? Like I'm spending time now, but my money's still coming in. Most people, when they don't spend time at a job, no money comes in. The money stops. So I could do TikToks all day. I can do TikTok lives all night, and I'll still get richer. So, right, what did I do? I transitioned from one treadmill to the next, and then at a certain point, I said, I'm not interested in going to work and spending 8 hours or 10 hours of my day there, doing that and whatever. And a lot of people, they like that. Like I said, they like work so they can keep it. You can keep it. It doesn't mean that you have like 3 or 4 treadmills going that are generating money without you actually physically laboring there, that you need to quit. I need to quit. I'm not suggesting that you need to quit. Sometimes jobs are really fun. Like I didn't have a terrible time all the time at my job. Sometimes we're fun, and maybe you just want to keep that, or you want to scale it down, right? So that's the treadmill. And The problem is, like I said, at school, they only teach you the one treadmill. They go, this is the golden treadmill. Get a good degree, get a job, sell your year or your hour for money, and that's the treadmill you need to be on. Did they tell you about the treadmill of productive assets and non-productive assets? No. Did they tell you about cash flow? No. Did they tell you the difference between investment and a speculation? No. Did they tell you about stock market, private businesses, rental real estate? No. They don't tell you nothing. They don't tell you any of the other treadmills that you could transition to or help build so that it takes a load off you. So Gaines asks, what is your first productive asset? So again, my first productive asset was a business. It failed, but it was a business. You have to understand this. At their core, productive assets are businesses. Right? I don't care if you're talking about rental real estate or if you're talking about private companies, you're talking about a US index. You know, at the core of their fundamental components, they're a business that sells something, sells a good or service, a good being iPhone, I don't know, markers, paintbrushes. They sell stuff for money, or they sell a service. Service would be like shelter, like a REIT would sell shelter or commercial space, or would sell cleaning services or home deliveries or some service, and they get money. All right, so you want to collect those either in some form of a diversified portfolio of businesses known as an ETF, could be known as ETF, a diversified portfolio of private businesses, a diversified portfolio of rental properties, a diversified portfolio of dividend stocks, a diversified portfolio of royalty producing assets. Like, you need some kind of productive asset if you plan not to work until you die, right? It seems obvious, and they should have told us that in school. Okay, so that's the treadmill that we're taught, the one golden treadmill. But the other treadmills exist, and people are using them, right? A vending machine. Yeah, I always say pinball machine because I grew up in the 80s, and pinball machines were really cool. And I used to go to Fairview Mall, and I used to go to Fairview Mall in the 70s. That's the local mall here. And they had this little small arcade underneath the escalators, and all the teenagers, all the big kids, were playing like games like Centipede and Zaxxon and Pac-Man, and they were feeding quarters, and I would just watch them. I'd be like, wow, I wish I had money to play this. Like, I don't have any money, but I love watching them play, and they would play for a long time. So I always think about like pinball machines and stuff like that. Okay, so that's number one. Number one is you want to discover productive assets. Okay, that's number one. And before I continue, thank you for joining me on this channel for financial literacy. If you like content about financial literacy and you want to learn things that school hasn't taught you, make sure you follow me. Also, I'm on Facebook as of recently, the Fire Club. Join the club. I answer questions there. It's very difficult. Like, the messaging on TikTok and Instagram isn't conducive to answering questions because it's just garbage. I get a lot of garbage. Like, a lot of like, hey, promote my crypto, or do you want me to invest your money? Or, hey, check out this NFT. Will you promote this NFT? And I'm like, that's a lot of garbage. So if you want to message me directly, go to Fat Fire Club at Facebook. That's me. There's no ads on there. I don't get spammed with NFT and crypto promotion schemes and all that stuff, which I hate. So if you want to ask me questions, that's the best way. I do check my messages on TikTok and Instagram, but let me warn you, I have to wade through a lot of crap. Right? So don't expect me to answer right away. Okay, so that's the treadmill thing. Now, a lot of people ask me about the 4-bucket method. So the 4-bucket method is, again, something that they don't tell you in school, but I will talk a bit about it because people have asked me. So the 4-bucket method is a system that I created over time to help me automate wealth building. Automate, right? When I started, I was hardcore picking individual stocks, scoping out private businesses, starting up a company. It's a lot of work, it's a lot of work. So I had to create a system where I knew that later on, when I got kids, I had other things I wanted to do, go on vacation. I didn't have to like kill myself, to keep getting wealthier. Let me see some questions here. Jim, how do I get my daughter thinking differently about money to the regular narrative? That's tough. It's just conversation, right? It's conversation, and it's just talking to them about what money is, what things cost, how do you envision collecting money. The problem is there's a lot of information from school, parents, teachers, classmates about how money is made, and you have to spend a lot of time deprogramming because it's always going to be work forever, collect a paycheck, die poor. No problem, Jay. Thanks for coming. Okay, so the 4-bucket method. The 4-bucket method is a system I developed where I put the pieces together in order to maximize and solve certain problems that everyone has, okay? So, the first bucket, a lot of people, this is how most people, I'll start with how most people end up broke that I've seen is bills come in, or they get paid, they pay all their living expenses, cost of living, they end up with nothing, and then they do it again. Right? They do it again. They go to work, they work really hard, 8, 9, 10, 12-hour days, pay their cost of living, end up with nothing. Now the reason this happens is because of something called the Hedonic Treadmill. The Hedonic Treadmill lives up here. That means whatever you consume, you become accustomed to always having it. An easy example is I didn't grow up with air conditioning, okay? That sounds stupid, but we were poor. And air conditioning was kind of temperamental back in the 70s. I had no air conditioning. I learned to live without air conditioning. When I went to the mall and it was air conditioned, I was like, wow, this is amazing. Then if you decide to get air conditioning at home, back then you were rich, if you had air conditioning. I slept in the basement. So if you had air conditioning, you got used to it. You will continue to pay for it. And that's how people get accustomed to an increasing cost and standard of living. It's called a hedonic treadmill. This is why people who make money, spend a lot of time making money, pay their cost of living, end up with nothing. Because they become accustomed to higher and higher standards of living. Well, I bought a Gucci belt. I can't buy a normal belt. That's crazy. I bought a BMW. I can't buy a Toyota. You crazy? Like, I'm not gonna go downsize to a Toyota. I live in a 25 square foot house. I can't go down to a 1,000 square foot condo. That's impossible. So you need to understand that hedonic treadmill only moves upwards. You become accustomed to more. So that's number one. You need to remember that that's how psychology works. You become accustomed, and whatever you become accustomed to, you cannot live without. You cannot go below that standard of living, right? That's number one. Number two, so the first bucket is my growth bucket. I talk about my growth bucket first. A lot of people are like, oh, my cost of living bucket, my cost of living bucket. No, you don't talk about that first. It's your growth bucket. Your growth bucket is for a better, so your tomorrow self will have a better life. If you do not feed your growth bucket first, you will die broke. You will have a high risk of dying broke. Growth bucket is the portfolio of diversified investments that you and your financial advisor have worked out for you to be able to fund your future self, children, shelter, healthcare, whatever, right? That's your growth bucket. I'm not going to go into specific investments. My growth bucket was, at the time, US stocks, and then later, US real estate. But that aside, your growth bucket is whatever productive asset that you and your financial advisor have built together to help you live a better life, you and your family, in the future, right? So that is fed first. Number two is your emergency bucket. Because if you've lived long enough, I'm almost 50. right? I'm almost 50 years old. I will tell you right now, if you guys are younger than 50, and even people who are older than me, you can attest to this, shit happens. Shit happens. Parents die. Health problems come up. Your car gets into an accident. You get laid off or fired. Shit happens. Okay? I don't care who you are, shit happens. Okay? So, you need that emergency fund. So, now when I said the growth fund, right, to fund your future self, right, so you don't end up broke, and then your emergency fund, people say, well, Jim, if I feed my emergency fund, I'm not going to have enough for my growth. If I feed my growth fund, I'm not going to have enough for emergencies. That's a problem, right? So you need to build them together. Do not build them serially. Serially meaning I'm going to fund my growth and then I'll fund my emergency. Or I'm going to fund my emergency, then I'll fund my growth. I'll tell you why. If you fund your emergency first, you will miss out on a lot of time for compounding. Like you can miss out on years. Like, can you imagine missing out on the last 5 years as you built up your emergency fund? Like you would have missed out on a lot of growth, right? Conversely, if you built up your growth fund first and you had an emergency, a health problem, job loss, guess what? You're selling your growth fund. You're selling your investments to pay for that emergency. So you can't do them serially because they both have serious consequences. What you want to do, and what I did, in my opinion, is to build them together. So let's say you're investing $400 a month in your growth, put $100 for emergency. So every month you're building both. 4-1, 4-1, 4-1, or whatever you're comfortable with. 3-1, 3-1, 3-1. So you're slowly building up your growth fund. You're not losing time compounding, right? You're not missing out. You're always invested. You're staying the course. And your emergency fund is being built up. It's not going to be built up to like 6 months of expenses overnight, but you have that. And when emergencies inevitably hit, they'll hit, right? As someone who's almost 50, you're going to bump into something, you know? Something bad's going to happen, right? That's how life works. You have that emergency fund that you've built up. However, having said that, if your emergency fund caps out at whatever number you set for it, say 3 months of expenses, 5 months of expenses, whatever they cap, then you can stop. Then it's just feeding your growth fund, all right? So I'll talk about the opportunity fund next. So we're talking about 4 buckets, right? We've covered the growth and we've covered the emergency. Bart Bomber. Should I pay off my house or continue to save, make 20% on investments and cost 3% on house market? You know, don't assume that you're going to make 20% on your investments. That's number one. Whatever environment we're in now is very unusual. I've been investing since the 80s. 20% annual returns is not normal. Do not get accustomed to these type of returns. I'll go into that a bit later. And that's a very deep question. So I'm going to put that aside for now, Bart Bomber. For myself, just a short answer is I would do both, right? So how do you determine what an expense is? Well, I have to pay for it. That's money has to be used to feed it. So anyway, going back to the 4 bucket rule. You have your growth, you have your emergency. The third one, for me, when I started, was my cost of living. So think about that for a second. My cost of living is tailored to what I have left over, as opposed to cost of living is the first thing I pay for. Then psychologically, when I have that hedonic treadmill, because I've paid for a certain cost of living and have nothing left, I become accustomed to it. I cannot reduce that cost standard of living. I cannot. It's very difficult. That's why I put cost of living last, because you can always become accustomed to more. That is the big danger of prioritizing your cost of living. If you work and then pay for cost of living, your standard of living will rise to what you're accustomed to and set it there. And then if you have nothing left for your emergency or growth fund, you're stuck. Your brain won't let you go backwards. If you're accustomed to driving that Mercedes, you're accustomed to wearing that Gucci belt, you're accustomed to taking first class flights, you're accustomed to like having like a 2,500 square foot home, you're not going backwards from that. very dangerous, in my opinion, to have cost of living bucket first. Growth first, emergency second. They're very close. 1 and 2 are very close. Cost of living third. You live on the left over, and then you know that your future's taken care of. Disasters in life are taken care of. And now you're living accustomed, and you're not triggering that hedonic treadmill. Later on, as I became wealthier, I set up the 4th bucket, which is the opportunity. This is after you set up your emergency, your growth, cost of living, and then opportunity, right? Opportunity is 4th. That is the least useful if you're not wealthy. So I got to a point where I had a lot of money, right? If you live in the way where you have your wealth emergency prioritized, your cost of living third, you'll eventually find yourself with a lot of money. That's what will happen. You will end up with like excess money. So then you're like, well, what do I do with it? You know, you can do stuff like, oh, I'm going to take more vacations. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. That's fine too. And then you'll still find you'll have more money. So then you have something called opportunity. So the opportunity bucket I created was based off of what Warren Buffett said, which is be fearful when others are greedy and be greedy when others are fearful. For those who don't know the quote, it means that disasters often hit the market, and when disasters hit the market, that's the time for you to be a buyer or a shopper. And then when there's normal times or boom times, that's the time for you to sort of just see how things are going. It's like shopping, you know. If you see a discount where things are 80% off, maybe you go in the store, you browse around, see if there's anything you like, etc. But when things are regular price, it's Christmas, it's Black Friday or Cyber Monday, you know, unless there's a big discount, you know, you just basically hold off. Or Halloween or Valentine's Day, where roses go from like whatever, $8 to like $80, you know, maybe you hold off then and buy a day off or something like that. So that's the idea. So the opportunity fund I created because when I talk to people who give that quote, a lot of people say that quote, oh, be fearful when others are greedy and greedy when others are fearful. So when the real estate market crash in Toronto hit in the late 80s, early 90s, I was like, are you guys greedy? Are you guys, no, I'm not, I'm really scared. When the dot-com crash hit and there were opportunities everywhere, you can buy Amazon stock for 70 cents. Are you greedy? They're like, no, I'm fully invested, I can't. When the credit crisis hit and stocks went down and real estate went down and there was a once-in-a-century opportunity to buy real estate, and I said, hey, are you guys greedy now? It's like, oh, no, you know, I don't know, maybe the world's ending. No one was living by that quote except for Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett was the only one who made the quote and lived by the quote. And I said, I'm finding it very annoying that nobody is taking advantage. So I created an opportunity fund where I would basically use that for the opportunity that presented itself. That's the 4th bucket. That's the last one, and only when you have excess capital. The opportunity fund can't be too large. If it's very large, it's going to weigh down your returns. Picture this, you have $1 in investments and you have a $10 opportunity fund. That's going to be like an anchor. So my opportunity fund is no more than 10% of my total investable assets. Investable assets do not include your home. They do not include your car. They don't include your clothes, your kids' toys. They include your investments. So if you have $1 million of investments, your opportunity fund, or my opportunity fund, would be no more than 10%, $100,000. No more than that, right? It becomes a drag otherwise. If your opportunity fund, if my opportunity fund exceeds 10%, that means I'm not investing consistently enough. Like I'm doing something stupid, right? That's what it should be telling you. User 769, would you take on a mentee? What? No. No offense to you. I love you. But I'll tell you one thing. When I got onto TikTok and I started getting some followers, people started asking me to talk to me for like an hour, a time. And I entertained some people because it was new and I'd never, done that before. I've never been on social media. So they're like, oh, can I talk to you for an hour? And at first I said no. And then I set myself an hourly rate because I was like, I have other things to do. Like I have to walk my dog. I have to like take my a kid to activities. I need to go shopping. I need to like do groceries. I need to do stuff. Like I'm a normal guy. I need to do stuff. But I did it a few times, and eventually I was like, why am I doing this? I don't even need the money. Like I don't. So I stopped because like really, like most people who are wealthy, it's the time that they want to spend doing other things. So I don't. Never say never. Maybe I'll take a mentee in the future, but right now I'm happy doing nothing. No offense. Okay, so that is the 4 bucket rule. And so this is the type of stuff I'm going to be posting on my Facebook group, Fat Fire Club. Again, like I said, please post messages there. Join the club. Fat Fire. Fire stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early. Fat means abundant, or having an abundant lifestyle of contribution and of making work optional, right? So if you want to send me a message or have a question, that club is best because I try to get to my Instagram and my TikTok messages, but I'm getting cluttered with junk. Like I said before, people are asking me to promote their NFTs, their crypto. Hey, do you want to buy users? Do you want to like me to promote your post for only like, $9.95? And can you promote my NFT? Like I get a lot of garbage in these messages, which I don't want to deal with. I do go through them once in a while, not often, because it's like a lot of garbage. And to answer the people who are genuinely interested in improving financial literacy, because I feel bad because I was in that boat when I was in the 80s and I was looking for help and no one was able to help me. So I do get to my messages, but it'll take a while. If you go to Fat Fire Club on Facebook, I respond a lot faster there because I'm not cluttered with junk. Okay, junk. So anyway, so we talked a bit about the treadmill of the poor and middle class, and then we just talked about the 4 bucket rule. Hey, Pixel Package. How's it going? What's your favorite McNugget sauce? Honestly, I'm a quarter pounder with cheese type of guy, so I'm not familiar with all the nugget sauces. How much are you worth? At least $5. I'm worth at least $5. Glowworms. What is the least amount that I can start my buckets? You can start right away. Like, all I'm saying is McDonald's is poison. I agree, but sometimes I eat it. Very bad for you. I do not do that. Very bad, but I do it occasionally. I'm sorry. So how much can you start your buckets worth? Okay, so this is a good question, actually. So when you start your growth bucket and your emergency fund simultaneously, I would start with, this is difficult. You know why it's difficult? Because, and I remember this when I started, when you start your investment accounts, some investment accounts will charge you a fee. And I got reminded of this because I take it for granted that you can just dump in like a lot of money into your investment accounts. They charge you a fee if you don't have a minimum balance, right? First of all, you need to work with your financial advisor to get set up with tax advantage accounts. So if you're American, right, you want to do the Roth IRA, right? If you're Canadian, the TFSA. Eventually, you want to Rothifize everything, eventually. Most people start off, for example, like Americans will start off with a Roth IRA, and then they'll have a traditional 401k with their employer or a SEP IRA, right? They'll have something like that. Roth IRA is very important. So for Canadians, you might be like, be given a defined contribution pension plan from your employer, which is the equivalent, or an RRSP/DCPP, right? Defined contribution pension plan and an RRSP, right, from your employer where they match, right? They might do that. And then it's up to you to start your TFSA or your tax-free savings account. And if your employer doesn't offer that, then your priority should be the TFSA. Tax-free is the priority. Freedom from tax. Tax-free, in my opinion, is the priority. So you need to start with that first with your financial advisor. So you start with tax-free Roth IRA or TFSA, right? And you work with your financial advisor and you start putting money in there. Number one, you put money in. Number two, you have to invest it. Money in and then invest it. A lot of people, so many Canadians, I've seen the stats. They don't even use the TFSA. When they put the TFSA in, they do nothing with it. It sits in cash. When they put money in their Roth IRA, it sits in cash. It's not invested. They don't work with a financial advisor. It doesn't grow at all. Seriously, talk to a financial advisor about opening up your Roth IRA or TFSA. Set a plan where you contribute regularly and allocate it. Allocating is actually important. Going to the gym is not enough. You actually need to work out. Okay? Going to the gym, going to the restaurant is useless if you don't eat. Okay. So, getting back to the real thing. So, a lot of times they'll be like, oh, if you don't have this much money, we're going to have to charge you a fee. That sucks, okay? And I think, for example, like they might say, oh, if you don't have 25,000 or 20,000, we'll charge you a fee. That is a problem that I dealt with like three decades ago. So that's difficult. You're just gonna have to find an advisor or a custodian that will help you minimize that fee or eliminate it and contribute like you would, you know, whatever it is, $100 a month for growth, $50 a month for emergency, and then do that just regularly. You know, see if your financial advisor could automate it. You know, every month I put in $500 in my Roth IRA, and then I have to put in $100 to my high interest savings account emergency fund that I'm not going to touch. And you got to do that. Maybe you can automate that too, right? Try and do it that way. And then whatever amount you're comfortable with. It doesn't have to be 500, 100 or whatever. I roughly use the rule of 4 to 1, right? But it really is catered to what you can do and what you can maintain consistently, right? So you don't want to be like a diet where you eat like celery all day and then you quit after a week because it's disgusting. You want something where you can manage it and you can keep it going, you know? So try that and hopefully that helps a little bit. How often would you allocate those funds? TD is $10 commission. Hurts my great your grant. Yeah, that is another problem too. So Bob brings up another problem. So number one, banks are notorious for charging fees. Okay, you don't have a big enough balance, they charge a fee. You want to buy stock, they buy for every transaction. That is a pain. TD, I'll tell you one thing. What I did, I actually called. This is a pain in the ass, right? But $10 is annoying, right? So I would actually call customer service, sit on the phone and say, I want to transfer this much money, and I would wait for a certain amount. So maybe it would be like $800 at the time, or you know, $5,000 or whatever it was. Wasn't lump sum like you should be, which is the best. I would call them and get them to waive the fee, and they would waive it. It would be a lot of like sweet talking and all that stuff, but I would do that because it is a pain in the butt if you're investing like, you know, $100 and they take 10. So I would wait until I had, say, 1,000, and then 10 wouldn't be so bad. You know, so you have to work around that. That's the nature of the beast. Custodians, fund managers, fund companies, they charge. So you have to like minimize the amount of trading, or set a dollar amount so that the $10 per transaction isn't so heavy. So spending $10 to allocate 1,000 might be worth it. Spending $10 to allocate $100, you might want to wait off until you build up enough. Okay, so yeah, that is the nature of the beast. I dealt with that too. I forgot about that, but that is a pain in the butt. Hey, Dr. Brad's here. Good to see you. What kind of account should an emergency bucket be? That's a fantastic question. So myself, you have to understand what the emergency fund is for. The emergency fund has two purposes, okay? Two roles for the emergency fund, people forget. But before I get into what the emergency fund for, I want to do a quick hit on my club, Fat Fire Club on Facebook. I get all the messages there that are not cluttered with ads for NFT and crypto. Like on TikTok, I get a lot of messages about like, hey, promote my crypto channel. Hey, promote my NFT. Hey, do you want to promote this coin, this whatever coin? It's like I don't like that. It's a lot of garbage there. So go to my club, fatfireclub.com. Fat Fire Club on Facebook. Post there and I'll see it faster. I'll get to my TikTok and my Instagram messages, but it's a lot of garbage and I only do it once a week because I can't stand it. No offense. Like, they got to do something with the spam. Spam is like ridiculous. So the emergency fund has two purposes. Number one is for emergencies, right? I mean, you have a fender bender, you have a health issue, you have a job loss. You don't want to like be caught with your pants down. Like, a lot of people in Canada, like you saw certain research reports, they can't afford a $200 surprise charge a month. Or was it $400? Whatever, it's a small amount. $400 surprise charge a month, they're sunk. They don't know where to get the money from. Goes on their credit card, goes on their line of credit, right? You don't want to be in that boat. So it prevents you from going into debt for dealing with life's problems. And remember, as someone who's almost 50, life has problems. Don't think that you're going to live until 50 and it's going to be smooth sailing. You're going to deal with stuff, with shit. Your kid's going to get in trouble. You're going to have a health problem. Your car's going to get into a wreck. You're going to lose your job. You're going to lose a parent. You're going to lose something. If something bad's going to happen, you're going to need money. And you got to have that emergency fund. So that's number one. Number two, an emergency fund not only prevents you from going into debt to deal with this, but it prevents you from selling your investments. Compounding is your friend. You want your investments to stay the course. Don't touch it. Stay the course. Whatever you and your financial advisor have set up for you, you need to stay it. Keep it there. Let it grow. Don't liquidate it. You liquidate it, not only are you off the compounding train, you might be hit with fees. You might be hit with taxes. You will just be destroyed if you start pulling money out of your investments, especially if they're in tax-advantaged accounts, like your traditional 401k or your RRSP, right? You will just get destroyed. So don't do that. What did you do to become a millionaire? It was what I'm talking about this channel is become financially literate, start understanding how money works. And so anyway, I'm gonna go back, some questions back here. What kind of account should an emergency bucket be? Oh yeah. So it's a high interest savings account for me because the emergency fund needs to be liquid. When you have an accident, you can't wait 2 months to get the money out, right? So it's to be liquid, non-volatile, right? It can't be invested, right? Your emergency fund can't be worth $1,000 one day and $20 the next day. You can't invest it in like high-tech stocks or, you know, over-the-counter stocks and have the value fluctuate, because when you need $500, you need $500. You don't need like, oh, it was 600 yesterday and now it's 350. I'm screwed, right? So it needs to be non-volatile, not invested, liquid, easily accessible, where you can get at it when you have a problem, right? So yes, it's a high interest savings account. The interest is taxable. Yes, you're going to have to include that in your taxes, right? Interest expense is going to be charged at the highest rate. That's the nature of the emergency fund. The emergency fund is not for getting you richer than God. It is there to deal with emergencies. And as someone who's almost 50, you will deal with an emergency. Don't tell me, there's nobody that I know in my age demographic that hasn't dealt with shit, okay? We eat shit for life. Like that's forever, okay? You're gonna deal with that shit. Oh, look at that. All right. Let's see here. Who's this? User Naj495. What degree did you get from university? I went to the University of Toronto. I didn't go anywhere crazy. Born and raised in Toronto. Went to University of Toronto. Got an engineering degree eventually from the University of Toronto after failing second year. Buckled down. Got the diploma. Threw it in a corner. Hey, right? So, is the Roth IRA part of your growth bucket? Yes. So I consider growth to be anything in a brokerage account, tax advantage account like a Roth IRA or a traditional IRA or a SEP IRA or a traditional 401k. As an aside note, for Americans, you eventually want to Rothifize everything. You want your 401k 401k, your 403, your IRA, eventually to be Roth. You want tax-free, right? You don't want tax-deferred, but tax-deferred is not bad. I mean, if you have tax-deferred 401k, like a traditional 401k, and you have a Roth IRA, you're not doing bad. I mean, that's fine. But tax-free is better, right? In my opinion, it's better. Work with your financial advisor to see what works for you. We don't have that option in Canada, right? Our only tax-free option is the TFSA, right? $6,000 limit this year, $75,500 total contribution room available. It's a small amount relatively to the RRSP, but it is tax-free. I prioritize that over the RRSP, but I still contribute to the RRSP because it is tax-deferred. Tax-deferred is not a big advantage because you save taxes now, but you're gonna have to pay it later. So don't think it's a free lunch. It's like depreciation for real estate. You're saving taxes now, but you're gonna have depreciation recapture later. I like tax-free. Tax-free is forever. Like, that's forever. So I like that better. Tax-deferred, I would put as second, right? It's important. And then last but not least is taxable. Completely taxable would be like your brokerage account, right? For us, for Canadians, we call it a non-registered account. And remember, if you have those three accounts, tax-free, tax-deferred, and taxable, so some people have filled up their tax-free. They've done as much as they want in tax-deferred because they want to reduce their taxes now, but they don't want a huge tax bill later. So they have a little bit of that, and then they open up a taxable account. Remember, taxable account, anything that pays a dividend, pays interest, pays anything, you want things that don't pay anything in the taxable account. So for example, shares of Berkshire Hathaway, they don't pay a dividend. Some of the fast-moving companies in an ETF, like tech ETFs, may pay very little in dividends, and that's another story why they're paying less dividends. But low dividend payers to no dividend payers, you want to put in your taxable, because every time those investments spit out money in a taxable account, wham, you're hit. Wham, you're hit, right? Again, caveat, consult a tax attorney or accountant. Don't rely on me for your tax advice. This is just education. Second, having said that, in Ontario, where I live, you can earn up to $50,000 tax-free off dividends. Okay, again, taxes are a very layered beast, right? I can't give you enough information that will satisfy everybody in like a live, but in general, tax-free, you can put anything in there. It's tax-free, right? Your ETFs, your low-fee mutual funds, whatever investments you and your financial advisor want. Like, it doesn't matter if it pays a dividend or not, or interest or not, it's tax-free. Doesn't matter, okay? Second, tax-deferred. Okay, it's spitting off dividends, it's spitting off interest, it's spitting off whatever. You might not pay taxes now, but you're gonna pay it later. Not a free lunch, it's good for now, right? Last, taxable. You get hit right away, right? $50,000 tax-free dividend aside. You get hit right away. Play it safe. No dividend stocks in there. No interest producing investments in there. Like, you know, for me, it'd be like Berkshire Hathaway. No dividend. That would be perfect in a taxable account. That's where I put it. So that's short and sweet. Anyway. Oh, sorry. Did I cuss? What did I say? Don't tell me what I said. I don't want to. Okay, Nick Hammond. I own a home worth $850. I have $400 owing. I have $250 $250,000 in bank, and save $2,000 a month in TDB 902. For those who don't know, TDB 902 is a U.S. index. It's a low-fee U.S. index provided by TD. It's an E-Series mutual fund. Is that a question? I would say congratulations. Oh, question. Thinking about buying a cottage and doing Airbnb. Thoughts? I'm not gonna. I wouldn't do that. That's all I'm gonna say. I'm not gonna tell you what you should do. You need to figure out your expenses. If I had that, if that's all I know, that you have a home worth $850, you have half of it owing, you have $250,000 in the bank. I don't know where in the bank, in a tax-deferred, tax-advantaged account, and then you're saving $2K a month in a low-fee U.S. index. I don't know what your emergency fund situation is. I don't know what your opportunity fund situation is. and you want to buy a cottage and Airbnb-ing it, I would, without knowing more, I would say for me, that would be a no. Okay? DCPM. If you have cash on hand now, how would you invest it now? Okay, so that's a good question actually. So because people want to know, like, oh, it's great, Jim, you started investing in the 80s or 90s. You know, what about now? I'll tell you one thing first, caveat first. And before I do the caveat, again, I'm gonna promote Fat Fire Club on Facebook. That's where I am if you want to ask me questions, right? Oh yeah, 403B. I don't know what you're referring to, but yeah, anyway. So yeah, follow me on Facebook there. If you post questions there, it's a higher chance that I'm gonna see it. I get so many messages on TikTok and Instagram, and it's not that I get so many messages, it's that 90% of messages is junk. It's like, promote my crypto, promote my channel, sell my NFT, check out this video. Like I don't, it's a lot of junk, okay? So I try to get to the messages on TikTok and Instagram on my DMs, but it's a lot of junk, so I don't do it often. I do it like once a week maybe. So go to Fat Fire Club, which I set up on Facebook for people to actually send me messages that I will actually see, and I don't have to deal with junk. I don't have to deal with people telling me to promote my NFTs. I will cut those people out, ban them. Promote my crypto. I don't do that stuff. You know, promote my day trading course. Sorry, I don't do that. So that's that. So what would I do now? So right now, 2021, to me, feels like 2015, feels like 2005, feels like 1995, or I would say maybe 1998, feels like 1986. And what do those things all have in common? Everything was fine. The economy and the stock market didn't seem to have any disruptions. Everyone was happy. Everyone thought that 20% returns per year were normal. People were starting to day trade or gamble with their play money. More people had play money. More people were looking to retire yesterday. So it really feels like no one has any concern for risk whatsoever. That's really dangerous, okay? I've been around for a long time. I've seen people lose their homes, lose their retirement accounts, lose things that they, like my friend's parents lost their home in the Toronto real estate crash in the 90s. That's not a fun thing. I saw people lose their homes in the foreclosure crisis of America. I saw people lose their retirements during the dot-com crisis, right? So what it feels like now to me is that everyone's happy, everyone's content, and everyone thinks that what is happening now in terms of investment returns will continue forever, and that they can take a gamble on meme stocks, crypto, NFT, commodities, Airbnb, whatever, you know, it's just play money. This is the time where things are the most dangerous. Most dangerous. Complacency is the most dangerous emotion you will have as an investor. 100%. The second most dangerous emotion you have as an investor is fear. They're very close. Complacency is more insidious because it doesn't feel bad. Complacency feels like, you know, things are good, but that's very dangerous. When you think things are stable, good, predictable, bad. That should be a warning sign. Number two, fear. So in the depths of a downturn, you know, the stock market has crashed like 50% and real estate's down by 20% or whatever, or some other commodity market is down by 50%. That's fear. That fear you can recognize as being dangerous. It's not dangerous because the market is down. It's dangerous because people who are not prepared, and I don't know why you're not prepared, 200 years of crashes should tell you that crashes come. Like, I'm surprised when people are like, oh my God, I'm so afraid. The history of America has shown crashes happening periodically, regularly, consistently for over 2 centuries, Why are you afraid? Why are you shocked? Bro, why are you shocked? The fear is dangerous because then people start selling. They sell their home. They sell their investments. They sell from their tax-deferred account. They sell from their tax-free account. They sell this. They sell that. They sell their cottage. They sell their car. They sell everything. And they want to sell it fast. Very dangerous, right? So fear is not danger because it's like, oh my God, the world's ending. Fear is dangerous because it will entice you to sell things that you shouldn't be selling. And complacency is dangerous because you don't know that you're heading towards a cliff. And cliffs are always there. So when things are like how they are now, and I had 100,000, if I had 100,000 now, that was the original question. What would I do with 100,000? I would go back to what I was doing when I was in the 90s. Because I had that amount, I would immediately 90,000 in my growth fund, 10,000 in my emergency fund. Oh no, sorry, my bad. 3 months of expenses in my emergency fund, right? 3 months of expenses, and the rest in my growth fund, right? Optionally, I would have my opportunity fund. May or may not. It's not enough for me to think about it. And if I was 20 again, I always feel like it's very easy to find a job. It's easy to make money. I can like work 24/7 if I needed to. So for me, that's fine. But if that's not you, you can say, I want my emergency fund and my growth fund first, right? So you'll do like whatever, 90, and you'll do 3 months of expenses. Put that aside. Let's say my expenses are 5,000 a month, 3 months of expenses, 15,000. 15,000 aside, right? So then what do I have left after 100? 85, right? 85, 9-to-1 split. So 90% will go into a growth bucket. 10%, which is like 8,500, will go to my opportunity fund. That's it. 15,000 in emergency, 8,500 my opportunity, the rest growing in a diversified portfolio that I constructed with my financial advisor. That's the number one option. Or number two option is 3 months of expenses for my emergency fund, which is $15,000, 85 in my growth bucket, as I built with my financial advisor. 85,000 for that. So it's a little bit more in the growth fund, but I don't have an opportunity fund. That means if a crash does hit next year, I just ride it out. There's nothing I can do. I have no opportunity fund, right? So the other one gives me flexibility, but slower growth because it's not invested right away. The second one gives me flexibility, but you're not growing as fast because you're not having as much committed sooner. Make sense? Good. Again, Rory is asking 800K, where would you put it? It's the same type of split I would be doing. Do you smoke Whizzle? No, I don't even know what that is. How old are you? I am 49, Jack Boots. You know, this is like when I press this button, all the messages go like this and I see nothing. What's a growth fund? It's whatever I'm using to invest to become wealthier so that my future self lives better than my today self. The only reason, okay, so let's double back a bit. Why are we becoming financially literate? Look, I don't want to be financially literate. I don't want to work out. I don't want to eat well. I don't want to do that. Okay, so the only reason you want to improve your financial, the only reason is because you want to live better tomorrow. You don't want to live worse tomorrow. When you're older, you have kids, you're like wrinkly, when employers will kick you to the curb, when nobody wants to talk to you, you'll have a better life tomorrow than today. That's the only reason you want to become financially literate. If you don't mind living worse tomorrow, then you spend today. Spend today and you will increase your chances of living worse tomorrow. If that's what you want, that's fine. Carpe diem, live for today, suck tomorrow. That's fine. I don't care. Most people do that. Most people, I think, I can't remember what the statistic was, 60% of people or 50% of people will retire broke. You want to retire broke? That's fine. To each their own. If you happen to want to live better tomorrow, then you should have a growth fund. You should have financial literacy. You should be able to put something so tomorrow lives better than today. That's it. Right? If you don't care, you don't care. Woo! It died. What happened to your investment club? Investment club was when I created it when I was investing in individual stocks, and then I basically stopped investing in individual stocks. So then there was no reason to have a club. A club was like to discuss investment opportunities and what people liked, didn't like, why they liked it, why they didn't like it. And then at a certain point, I transitioned over to passively managed, low-fee U.S. index mutual funds and ETFs. And at that point, what are you going to discuss? Like, oh, Tesla was added to the S&P 500, and then you go back to bed again. You know, who cares, right? The Little Book of Common Sense Investing is a great book, and I believe that should be the #1 book people should to start with. Okay? Scrolling. Hi from Texas Dollar Bean. Glad I caught you live. I am going to, I think TikTok saves it, which is great. Do you invest in covered call ETFs? I actually used to do covered calls in the 90s when I bought individual stocks. So for people who don't know, it's an options trading strategy where you cover the option that you have in cash. You can do either covered calls where basically you have the stock, right? And then you say, if it hits this price, I'll sell it. But if it doesn't hit this price, I want to collect option premium from it. So the time runs out, and then the person who actually paid you doesn't get the stock because it's not called away, and you get it's a long and storied history. Do I do that? No. It's not really passive. You know, maybe the ETF is passive, but there's no reason to do that. Like, you make more money just not doing anything. No offense. No offense. Thoughts on the FIRE idea and community? I love the FIRE idea, which is why I formed the Fat FIRE Club on Facebook. I don't know like all the little intricacies of the FIRE manifesto, right? When I started in the 80s and 90s, there was no FIRE. In retrospect, I guess I was living FIRE and I became FIRE. So for those who don't know, FIRE stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early. So I guess I retired early and I fit that outcome, but I don't know like their credo, right? Their specific, like what you specifically need to do. I created a system that helped me get there, and then I just make videos about it. If you want to start a business, does that only come from the opportunity? But yes. Devil Boy has a good question. If you want to start a business, that is another reason to have the opportunity bucket. So like I said before, the opportunity bucket is 10% of my investable assets, right? So if your investable assets are 100 grand, it's $10,000 max. Any bigger than that, it starts dragging, right? So with that 10,000, if I wanted to start a business, that's what I would use. If I wanted to get into real estate as an opportunity, that's what I would use. If I wanted to go into, I don't know, crypto or NFT, that's what I would use. The opportunity bucket is for that, self-identified opportunities that don't risk your main growth strategy. You got it? Got it? Good. Daniel, congratulations, 22 on the road to FIRE. Is there anything you need to do? Can you summarize my 5,000 videos in a sentence? There's a lot of things you could do. I can't go into all of them now. But in general, there's 4 things you need to do to become wealthy. Okay? The 4 things you need to do to become wealthy. Live below your means. Number 1. If you cannot live below your means, your chances are 0. 0. Do you understand that? If you cannot live below your means, rule number 1, live below your means. Like I said before, if you prioritize your cost of living bucket first, you will become accustomed to a certain standard of living that you will not be able to backtrack, right? When I talk about my 4 bucket strategy, growth, opportunity, emergency, cost of living, I always mention cost of living last. If cost of living becomes first, you will live accustomed to a certain lifestyle that you will not be able to downsize. You're used to driving Mercedes, you're not going to be able to drive a Toyota. You're used to spending $10 on coffee a day, you're not going to go down to $1 a day. You're used to having a 4,000 square foot house, you're not going to go down to 1,500 square feet. You're used to whatever, The hedonic treadmill will prevent you from backing off what you're accustomed to. So I never talk about cost of living first. So living below your means is number one. If you live below your means, you have the ability to execute the 4-bucket strategy that we discussed earlier. You can't live below your means, the game's over. The game is over. You're going to be in the group of 50% or 60% of people who are expected to retire broke. Whatever, if you do that search on Google, it's like whatever, some huge amount of people. You can't live below your means, you're done. It's over, right? Live below your means. Number two, because you live below your means, now you can execute the 4-bucket strategy. Now you'll have a better tomorrow. Number two, let's say you live below your means, you're investing, and then you're doing your calculations, you're like, I want more. I want more. I'm gonna retire with 2 million, but I want more. Okay, whatever, you're kind of weird, and you really wanna die, the richest guy in the graveyard. So then you need to increase your means. That's number two, increase your means. So live below your means and increase your means. You can do perfectly well with the first. And live below your means and 4-bucket method or 3-bucket method. I talked about the difference between both. You're fine. Let's say you want more. So live below your means, and then you have to increase your means. That's it. You got to increase your means. What was number 3? Oh, I can't remember now. Anyway, I know one of them was insurance. The fourth one is like insurance. You need to protect what you own, right? So I guess 3 was allocate capital, right? So that comes with the 4 buckets, right? So it's live below your means, increase your means, learn how to allocate capital. So if you're doing that, you need to become financially literate. You need to execute something very similar to a 3-bucket or a 4-bucket system. And then number 4, you need protection. So after protection, eventually if you decide to get married, you have dependents, you have a home, you have a mortgage, you have a spouse, you have a charity, you have something that is important to you, then you need insurance, power of attorney, you need a trust, you need a will, right? Something like that for protection. That's like the 4th and last step to wrap everything up in a bow for whatever you care about, right? So those are the 4 steps in general in order to FIRE. You just spoke on crashes, dirty dragon, being consistent. Does the next bubble look any bigger, smaller? Bubbles always look bigger. Okay, so a lot of people are like, think about this. If you look at the stock market, it's literally been going straight up for 200 years. Not right away. I mean, we had the Great Depression. We had this crash, that crash. We had the Cuban Missile Crisis. We had the oil embargo of the 70s, the savings and loan disaster. We've had a lot of, World War II, World War I. We've had a lot of problems. But in general, the trend line has been straight up, right? The trick here is the bubble is always bigger because the amounts involved go up straight up. So, for example, the stock market will, a lot of people, when I say oh, I went through this crash, they look back and it looks tiny. The crash looks tiny, right? It looks tiny only because the market has gone up straight. If the market has gone up flat, has been flat for a century, then every crash would look really big, right? Or equally big. But because the stock market goes from 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, 30,000, the crashes of 200, which were big 20 years ago, nothing now. So they always get bigger, and that's not a big deal. Bubbles are always bigger. So when people say oh, this is the biggest bubble in history, well, that's a good thing. Because if it wasn't the biggest bubble in history, that means the money-making or the wealth-building mechanism is broken. The wealth-building mechanism is not going up, it's flat. That means every crash looks identical in size. Only when the wealth-building ability of the U.S. productivity machine, represented by the stock market, the only way that it looks bigger is if it goes up. Otherwise, it wouldn't look bigger. So when people say this is the biggest bubble in history, well, that's actually a good thing. And it's going to be the biggest crash in history, that's a good thing too. Conversely, because that means the market was at its highest level, obviously the crash numerically, not percentage-wise, but numerically will be its biggest too. I wouldn't get worried over that kind of hyperbole which media uses to sell ad revenue and eyeballs. Biggest crash ever. Biggest bubble ever. Yeah, it's the biggest because as a nation, we've gotten richer over time. If we have not gotten, if our standard of living hasn't increased and productivity has not increased, then it would never be the biggest bubble or the biggest crash. It would be like another crash has happened. It would be the same crash because it would just go like this and productivity would be flat. Standard of living would be flat. Cost of living would be flat. Everything would be flat. So I wouldn't worry too much about like biggest bubble ever, in my opinion. All right, so again, if you enjoyed this type of content, make sure you follow me on TikTok. Go to Fat Fire Club on Facebook. That's where I answer most of my questions. Thanks for the questions on this live. I just did it impromptu. I'll talk about different things. We talked about the poor and middle class treadmill. We talked about the 4-bucket method, or the rule, or rhythm method, or whatever you want to call it. And we talked about some user questions and stuff like that. Hope you enjoyed it. Next time we're going to talk about maybe REITs or dividends or something else that's more exciting. Otherwise, find me on Facebook, follow me on TikTok, ask me questions in DMs. Again, if you want questions answered quicker, sooner than later, Facebook is the place to find me, Fat Fire Club. If you message me on TikTok, I get a lot of junk there, but I'll eventually get to it whenever I can. So thanks a lot. We'll talk to you soon. Love you.